It is my second presentation today, and I will talk about the Slovenian approach to drafting sustainability indicators for buildings. Okay. Sustainability in construction of new buildings, as well as in building renovation, was recognized as an important principle in the frame of climate and energy strategic documents in Slovenia and also at the European level. Everywhere you can find the term sustainable development, sustainable building, sustainable assessment, criteria, and so on. These kind of statements are listed in, for instance, in our operational and action plans on energy efficiency and mitigation of climate change. For instance, in Slovenia, there was a governmental decree that required the ministry responsible for environment and building regulation to develop the environmental requirements for design and construction of buildings, in order that by implementing those requirements, the entire life cycle can be considered. We also have an operational plan for using European cohesion funding, and there it is stated that the buildings which are supposed to be renovated in line with sustainability criteria are given funding priority. Then you can, if you look into the long-term building renovation strategy, there is also quoted the rule that the projects which reflect the compliance with sustainability guidelines may be given a priority for funding. As well, also in the greenhouse gas mitigation plan, there is policy presented by which we have to take care for mitigation of greenhouse gases in buildings, and that we have to take care for lower materials, for materials with lower emissions. And finally, the state committed to develop the sustainable indicators for buildings. And what is the challenge? In practice, the increasing of energy efficiency and the increasing of renovation of renewables energy sources in new buildings and renovation, often lack of consideration of other fields that are very close to sustainable building, like greenhouse gas emissions, resource efficiency, circular materials life cycle, then efficient use of water resources, healthy and comfortable spaces, better situation in safety due to mitigation of earthquake risks, life cycle costing, value of building over the lifetime. These are the issues that somehow have to be considered when we are planning new buildings or renovation. Currently, we have the decree on green public procurement. This decree in Slovenia impose the requirement for the use of at least 30% of wood or wood products. And 10% of this volume share of materials may be substituted by construction products which have environmental labels. But still, this kind of requirement seems very strict and quite binding for some architectural solutions. Therefore, the governmental decree, which is valid from the 1st of January 2018, foreseen alternative solution, and the rule of 30% of wood can be substituted if the design and construction of the building is made according to the rules of one of the certification scheme for sustainable construction, recognized certification schemes, like it's stated in the decree, like DGNB, BREEAM, LEED, or similar. The question is, what are the country-specific and relevant characteristics for sustainable building that can be used in Slovenia? To respond to this challenge, the Ministry of Environment commissioned a study on sustainable building assessment system and transposition plan. And this study was implemented by ZRMK Institute and by National Institute for Building and Civil Engineering in the years 2016 and 2017. The indicators and guidelines started or initiated in this study covered economic, ecological, and social areas of sustainable building. Just to mention a little bit about the status quo in assessment of building sustainability. We have internationally recognized market-driven assessment systems. I already mentioned them, LEED, BREEAM, DGNB, and maybe some other as well. All those, it seems like a temptation to take over such a system and use it in a small country like Slovenia is. But in reality, you have to know that every system which operates well in some big market like German or Central European market, it has behind a strong industry supporting it, a lot of research, a lot of professionals, and it just doesn't work like that, that you take something and a little bit adapt it and hope to use it in a small country. And again, European Union, European Commission committed itself to streamline sustainable building assessment systems across Europe. And that's why a joint research center prepared a study, development of a framework for core indicators for assessment of environmental performance of buildings. And this study focused on the implementation of European policies on resource-efficient Europe and circular economy, as much as these are related to the building sector. A result of this study, at the end of the 2017, I suppose, was an alpha version of 14 indicators published under the trademark levels. So this is a European challenge on how to consider building sustainability, but I have to say that this is more or less a framework and not very concrete indicators with some databases, calculation methods, and so on. So it's a guideline that gives useful information on how to adapt it on a national level. If I go back to the national study, what we did in Slovenia is that we analyzed the most popular systems for assessment of building sustainability. That means that we analyzed over 300 individual indicators in more than 6 certification schemes and approximately 650 sub-indicators. We finally come out with a solution which indicators are appropriate for Slovenian situations and which are not either relevant or are much too complex. The next step in the study was to test or to see how Slovenian national regulation in the building sector and how the engineering practice in this field corresponds to the most relevant and the most important indicators. Indicators are applicable if you can find the data for their values in engineering design. Otherwise, it's too complex, too time-consuming, or too expensive to evaluate such technical data. What we found out is that only about 1/3 of the selected indicators of sustainable buildings are at the moment adequately addressed by Slovenian building codes. Which indicators, for instance, we don't have any regulation on LCA analysis, we don't have any regulation on environmental impact of materials and products. On the other hand, we have a lot of regulation on thermal comfort, indoor air quality, quality of thermal envelope, and a little bit on simplicity of removal of construction components and recycling. What we did is that we, as I said, analyzed available indicators, which can be found in different certification schemes. We considered European way of tackling building sustainability, and we ended up with a proposal for 9 core indicators as a beginning of Slovenian scheme. These are the indicators with some sub-indicators, but I will just read some core titles of indicators, like total primary energy over the building life cycle, full LCA analysis, planning of building service life, decomposition and recyclability, construction and decomposition waste, use of water during the building operation, indoor air quality, risk of overheating, because the climate change is a problem, and also the life cycle costing of the building concept. So these are considered as the core indicators. Which areas are covered by these indicators? To some extent, some elements that are already addressed by the building codes are also considered in sustainability assessment, but only those areas where it is reasonable to consider that improved level of requirements would contribute to building sustainability. On the other hand, the majority of indicators cover the issues of so-called public good. The state is or has to take care about the public good in construction sector. And the indicators addressing public good are the indicators related to resource efficiency, circular economy, energy efficiency, mitigation of greenhouse gases. What is not considered at the moment are so-called indicators that are relevant for market priority of particular investments. The indicators that are interesting for real estate agents, for developers, for the simple reason because they are not considered as a public good. Where are we now with development of the national systems? We are somewhere at the stage of agreement of the most appropriate concept of sustainable building assessment. Next step will be developing the prototype, developing the alpha prototype, testing it, and so on, all the way through the voluntary. If you could wrap up
your presentation, please.
Yes, and this is my last slide.
Time.
The next steps in the development of building sustainability system in Slovenia will take part under the umbrella of Life Integrated Project Care for Climate, where led by the Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning. And in the next 2 years, we are planning to develop the set of alpha version of sustainable indicators and test them on the first case studies. And I would like to take this opportunity and invite Slovenian engineers, if they are interested in this field, to contact me later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.